And we say, I don't know.
Perfect. Greetings and peace, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me this evening. Tonight, I have the honor and privilege of being joined by my sister, Faye Aitken-Smith from England. Faye is somebody who I hold near and dear to my heart, and we have this honor of interacting with each other in our journey. And I had the pleasure of meeting her when I was visiting London this past September. And it's such a pleasure to just hear her experience for somebody that has went through so much in her life as a soul who has accomplished much, is a published author, and has so much wisdom to impart upon us. So thank you so much, Faye, for joining us, and I thank you for giving us your time. Welcome.
Thank you, Salman. It's been such a pleasure to cross your path as well. And I don't know how these things happen. You know, how, all the forces come to be, that we manage to meet and communicate and meet on such a level, having come from such different directions, to have gained the same level of consciousness where we can communicate beyond time and space and beyond even what we've learned. It's been quite magical.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And it's such a divine synchronicity. I think our life is laid out in such a beautiful pattern where all the things that we're meant to do, people that we're meant to see, places that we're meant to go, it's all a grand design that's culminating in a beautiful way. And I'm glad to have met you, Faye, and which comes to my question for those that don't know. Who is Faye Aitken-Smith, and how is it that you came to be who you are today in your current understanding?
Wow, it's a big question, isn't it? And there's so many different dimensions, isn't it, and points of consciousness coming it from. But ultimately, I think everything happens for a reason. And I always had the burning question, why are we here? What is this all about? What am I doing here? And how does it work? And what's the truth? What's the absolute truth?
Yes.
So as I kept asking these questions, this doesn't make sense. Does that make sense? It's almost like the quest unfolds, you get little clues, and then life circumstance happen and you don't realize at the time, but you're being challenged. And there was this idea of chivalry, of being honorable, or being truthful and being a good person. But then as soon as you set these limitations or tasks yourself, you'll be challenged to the complete opposite.
Yeah.
And for wanting to know it all as well, it wasn't just all the good stuff. Obviously, it's the complete contrast. This idea that you can't know one without the other, and this is another part of learning. Oh, that's a level of maybe this, the laws of what happens in this reality. So that the challenges come and you realize, man can be driven to doing anything. Life circumstances, the subplots, everything that goes down, our human natures, and circumstance can drive all of us to do almost anything. And then it's having that compassion and humility of thinking, but for the grace of whatever your God is, go I. And for all my obstacles, I'll hear someone else's life story and anyone's life story, and you think, wow, that's they've had their own mountain and their own challenges, which are is imperative to their to whatever their question was, whatever their quest is, and seeing that as well, because we can see everything subjectively, can't we? And there's so many disasters and traumas, and worldwide, on the macro, on the micro, and then understanding we are living out, each of us, this hero's journey, and not to. It sounds like I'm, making these other things not seem so disastrous, because on a level they are. But when you come to that level of understanding that this is a level of consciousness, there is perhaps a lot more than this reality, and tapping into that. And when you know that, you can see the other level, objectively for what it is. As you say, this great architect with the most amazing games going on simultaneously. And we're all having our different conscious experience, but we're all doing that in an orchestrated, magnificent, intelligent manner. It's always leaves you in awe.
Yeah, that's absolutely right, Faye. We're all on our individual path and our own individual journey. And I've seen that in many initiatic paths as well, where they tell you that this is your path and yours to walk alone. That many good and worthy people have walked this path before you, but this you must walk alone. So we're all on our own individual hero's journey, like you have said. And that is absolutely beautiful to hear that. Now, which goes to my next question. How do you see humanity and the world going within the next 10 years with the way the jobs, relationships, the education system, the money system, everyone in this world is struggling right now with inflation and crime and so many things which are happening all over the world, not only in England or America, but all over the world. The world and humanity are changing at a very rapid pace. So, from your divine feminine intuition, where do you see the future going within the next decade?
Well, I think now we have the information, we have the access to the information, we have access to each other. We must know on an individual level that we're all one being, we're all friends and brothers and sisters. We want the best for each other. Surely we can't live in a civilized global world without seeing the best for each other, knowing we have the resources and the finances and the capability of organizing that immediately yesterday. And all the other stuff and the fear and this other thing that we all seem to be dominated by now. If anything, I think it's teaching us, as this hero's journey does, to just trust, not trust other people, because we've done that before and it's invariably blows up, in a wrong way.
Yeah.
But trusting that the great architect's in control. We've not got this far for it to all go wrong.
Yes.
It's all self-organized itself in the highest order, whatever physics or maths you want to believe. My thoughts that it's gone through the singularity so many times, we've gone through this so many times, all the different timelines have happened so many different times that it all collapse down to the highest order, whether we want it to or not. And anything where it hasn't, or there's as it goes higher in the evolution of the consciousness, anything that was sort of lagging will have its karma to bring it back up. So this is perhaps the birthing pains of the things that were perhaps not as karmically good, that it's just getting flushed out. And as you say, this contrast thing, without one we can't know the other. To be grateful for, wow, we didn't have food and now we do have food, and there was a system that kept us ignorant and repressed and hating each other. How ridiculous. Can you imagine we even thought that? And this is how they did it. And they at the same time, it was the architect doing it, saying, look how you can be, if you trust another thing, if you go down these paths, if you don't basically live with honor, these other things can happen. But this is all part of the game. It's part of what makes it so dynamic and engaging. If you think this reality is all the the video games we've got now and all the technologies that are moving forward, this is also part of the bigger game. Is this not so much more dynamic than if you think every video game you could go and choose now, I know that you game, I don't particularly, but you could choose all these different worlds and realms that you can enter, and it's a bit like the individual consciousness. They've got their individual game, and you might be saying, well, come and look at my game, this is how I found my God. But they want to, unless you've played each other's games, that's what life is. I think we get to play all the different games to see all the consciousness, the whole spectrum. If this is what you've asked for, I know we asked to know the whole truth. Not everyone goes down the path. They're happy playing, their designated best game. But for the ones that have asked, have gone through all the different games to go, I see how that, that works, and to have the compassion for it as well. Because when you've lived through it, it's that being in another man's shoes. You'd have utter compassion for his journey.
That's absolutely right. And I think the way that you laid it out is absolutely fantastic, that we're living in this reality of infinite possibilities, infinite simulations, infinite existence and timelines. But in reality, it's all one true being that's projecting itself through me, through you, through all the different life forms on this earth. experiencing itself through itself, experiencing its glory, experiencing itself through different scenarios, through the ups and downs, and learning from itself. And that's what, even in the Sufi path, they tell us that man is God's greatest secret and God is man's greatest secret. So basically everything is in reality within you, Faye. And that is why if we restore true love, because true love is the only solution to all of our problems in this world, when we can have true love and compassion for each other as friends, as brothers and sisters. And I hope within my lifetime I can see something like that. And maybe that's the reason why my journey has taken me all over the world, to be a part of that process. Which goes to my next question, Faye, is if today was your last day on earth, what would you tell the people that you love, those that love you, you love them, as reality can be a challenging factor to deal with sometimes. But if you wanted to give a message to those that love you and to humanity as a last day on earth, what would you tell all of us?
I think just see the other side. I, personally don't believe there's death. In my experiences, there is another side. And if anything, this was the challenge to, what it'd be like to grieve and what it is like to lose. And obviously, I've lost people, and grief's just such a terrible thing to go through, and that gamut of and process of emotion, and to have the loss and to live without.
Yes.
And why would the great architect go this far to make it all so tragic?
Yes.
And the idea it's a simulation, it's electric, the laws of physics perhaps can stretch now to see that, there is an afterlife, the teachings that there is no illness, there's no death, the healing of Jesus, that these things and a level of consciousness are more than true. So yeah, we see the other side. I look out for you while, for the next bit, but they have to learn their lessons, whatever their bespoke life unfolding, their challenges give them their strengths, don't they? And this is what we have to learn for ourselves. You can think this is, this is the worst situation, or this person's come and they've done these terrible things to me, but it's made you rise up in your own honor, and, to know that you can defend yourself, or, to live through maturity of being challenged and being the person that you say, you are, and you will be tested.
Yes.
But I was like, the analogy of something like Harry Potter, there's no Harry Potter without Voldemort, there's no heroes without, without the villains. There's the smooth waters don't make good sailors, and we asked, didn't we? We asked to be good warriors and good knights and good people, and
that's interesting. You say that. That's interesting. You say that.
It's the spiritual workout, isn't it? Spiritual boot camp. Otherwise, you'd never know, would you? And you've risen up and gone, well, I've expressed my anger and I've had to, because I'd rather not express anger and I'd rather not lie and things like that. And you'll be challenged where it is then the morally right thing to do to step into these other, without becoming the monster that, you're trying to deal with. But yeah, it's the constant challenge, isn't it? And then you read the books and the literature and go, there's these initiations, and go, this must be, but you come to a point as well, and you read the books and you say, well, this is someone else's path. My ritual's my own one. As our fingerprints and our DNA are individual, so is our own unlocking and key to our own, inner doors and, different perceptions. The path.
That's absolutely right. That's absolutely right. And when you brought that up, it reminded me of the aspect of the tree of life, whether it's the left-hand path, the left branch of the tree, or the right-hand path, the right branch. Just like Harry and Voldemort cannot exist without each other, you also have those two trees, the branches connected to the same root. So it's all basically one initiatic experience. Like you said, you have to go through the ups and downs. And if it were not for the bad times in your life, you would not be the person that you're meant to be today. So smooth waters indeed do not make good sailors. You do need the rough waters.
This is the worst thing. You don't know you know, from the greater perspective, you could see that thing and how it directed you and gave you the different skills to go, oh, you know, you'd laugh and you'd fall on your knees and say thank you for that thing. But when you're living through it, you're like, why me? And, you know, I'm cursed or whatever. But it's always, you know, when you have those moments of clarity and you look back and you go, oh no, I completely see why all those different things had to happen in that order, to give me the different data and the different information I needed to then deal with what's confronting me now.
That's true. That's true. Now, which goes to my next question, Faye. Do you think we're here in a simulation, like a spiritual school, where we're being tested in some way to see if we pass the test? And depending on how we do in this life, we either ascend or we get promoted or we get demoted. What are your thoughts on that?
I think, you know, as technology develops, it gives us more tangible things to say, yeah, this is more like what I'm figuring out reality is like. And if you go back to the ancient texts and the Vedas and all, you know, you can see how it's trying to explain matrices and mayas and all these, you know, different ideas and levels of consciousness. So yeah. I think for a while simulation is the first thing that's, you know, I sort of realized a while back, as far as I got to understand it, and it was binary and fractal and all these different things. And I was completely obsessed with the Great Pyramid in Egypt and the hieroglyphics and the whole of that Giza plateau and seeing the different patterns. And looking at the hieroglyphics and, you know, what are they trying to tell us? You know, they're also trying to tell us something. What are they trying to tell us? And, you know, what would, sorry, my dog's barking. I'm going to just let him out 1 second.
Yeah, no problem.
So yeah, the Giza plateau and I know there's lots of other sites, but that was the one that I was, you know, initially drew me in, and I got completely, you know, obsessed with and completely read and devoured everything on. And I had the sort of download, you know, the prophecy, you know, the sort of vision, or, you know, I was writing fiction, so I, you know, wanted to come up, you know, connect dots and what would make sense and what would be true, and still, you know, asking for the absolute truth. And realize all the books that they wrote are coming forth by day, and or the, you know, the books of the dead. Yeah, I do think it's a simulation. I do think that there's an afterlife. I do kind of think that we've all been through enough in this realm. You know, I like to think immediately in the afterlife, you know, the first moments we go through it all, we see, because we might not, you know, to a certain extent, it's all predestined, and someone had to be a certain way for someone to be another way. So any sort of major, you know, things where someone's, you know, digressed or transgressed, but that's obviously been something better, you know, for someone else to go through. And I do believe people atone, you know, there's an atonement, there's a grieving for one's own behavior, but then a forgiveness. And I'd like to think the afterlife, where everyone's really then living their best life, that everything is forgiven, and that we realize someone, and it's a bit like, I don't know, you know, your sort of sitcoms over there, but someone has to play the bad, and we all have to hate that guy on the sitcom. But he's just an actor. He just had to come down and play that role. So, you know, we needed that for the whole play of the characters. And that's made someone else then, you know, be the savior, or, you know, part of their hero's journey. So, you know, that's what I'd like to think. And I sort of like to think people would go through their own hell here, only in the fact that they'd look at themselves and go, oh, wow, I've said some, you know, things or done some things. And you know, make good while one was here. But I know what the truth, you know, people go, and I like to think that was it then, in spirit, that all is forgiven, and they see the greater picture, and they are, for want of better words, you know, angels, all purely good and well-wishing versions. It's only come down here and we all become devils and tempted and sinners. You know, once we've figured it all out and that it's an afterlife, all the other ideas and the paradigms and the other systems are just blown out. They were just constructs that kept us in these different prisons to figure out these different things of what it was to be a human. But blowing it open that there's an afterlife, and that was all just a lesson, I think that's enough to cope with without the pettiness of, you know, you nicked my roses, or, you know, you forgot my birthday, or whatever, or, you know, bad marriage, or, you know, bad parent, or whatever. That it was somehow, you know, written in by a greater God as well, and that we played the part, and not to renege responsibility, but that was understanding, you know, we're all chosen. And, you know, we'll go off to the fields for 1,000 years and all live in harmony, you know. I think perhaps psychic, you know, so we don't, no one has to lie because everyone's psychic, till we get, you know, bored of the mundane of being perfect, and come back and start again, and think, you know, it's consciousness. And every time, you know, we think of something, our reality collapses down to look at that thing, doesn't it? And it's almost, you know, it's this malleable, infinite potential realities. Yeah, I like to think we figure it out. You know, we get the download, we remember exactly what we've been up to. You know, we all live happy ever after a bit, till we start all over again.
That's absolutely right, Faye, and thank you for stating that. And you know, it really reminds me of the aspect of past lives and reincarnations, and us just coming back here over and over again until we learn our lessons. And we do encounter each other in all these different lifetimes, in different physical avatars and different identities. So, and they do tell us your soul family, your soulmate, the people that you're connected with, you're always going to find them in one lifetime after another. I know in the Hindu tradition, they believe that very much. So what are your thoughts on that, on the aspect of past lives and reincarnations, and those that knew each other from different lifetimes still find each other under different situations, and they still come together no matter what, whether it's different identities or different names or different avatars?
Yeah, I've thought on this a lot, and you know, some people you recognize, and you know, you immediately know them. If I was going to write a book and I was thinking, you know, I'd like to think, you know, in the afterlife, you know, we're all living in harmony, and then we come down here to see the difference, to see the contrast, how we could wind each other, you know, we'd say, we'd never not love you, I'd never not love you. What if I came down to earth and did all these dreadful things to you, you know, you might not love me. To realize what we've got, you know, because you don't know you've got the perfect afterlife, do you, unless you've again got the contrast of what it isn't. So I do think, yeah, we've come to challenge each other and forget, you know, on the other round, we're brothers and sisters and living in harmony and having a great time. We got bored of it being so good. We came down for the contrast, you know. It's the adrenaline junkie of the, you know, the fallen angels. We come back down, you know, experience it all, just to, you know, realize, you know, what this actually is, this consciousness, information where we're spirits that, you know, get to have these wild experiences.
That's true, Faye. That is absolutely true.
Back in 1 second.
Yeah, please take your time.
Thank you, Salman.
Yeah, no worries. So my next question, Faye, is there was one thing that I heard, that there are 18,000 different universes, and each of those 18,000 universes, there's a planet like Earth. And each of those people in those 18,000 universes think that they are there by their own self. Now, have you ever thought about like different dreams, and how when you dream, you go to a spiritual school, or you go to a parallel reality and you find yourself in another timeline? What are your thoughts on dreams, and what are dreams dare to teach us?
I don't know so much about dreams. I never remember my dreams anymore. And I know a lot of people read into dreams, but the idea of, you know, there's, you know, you said whatever, 18,000 people with their own separate world. I think we're all in our own consciousness, living our own game, where we do all have our separate world, and we're all our consciousness claps down to this world. the parallel universe that you speak of, this would be my idea of, you know, where you'd go to in a deep meditation or a near-death experience, where you do realize that it's a school, and you're given, you know, you get to remember a little bit more why you're there and what you're meant to be learning.
Yeah.
And this is the idea of the Akashic records, which, you know, sort of came up a lot, in that the life's predestined and it's pre-written out, and it can potentially be, you know, accessed, you know, through astral, you know, projections or whatever.
Right. Right.
And that then you can learn. So where, you know, it's a bit, there's that Dickens novel, isn't it? And it's Scrooge and the Three Christmases, and to learn this is what you could have done, and you know, these are these sort of behaviors, and it's kind of what we learn in the spiritual path. And you know, when we first perhaps come to it, and people say it's your behavior, you know, you can only change yourself, so it's changing your perception. You're like, oh no, but the neighbors isn't, you know, it's this one, or it's, and it keeps coming back. No, you've got to, you know yourself, and then it's your reaction, and changing your own, you know, sort of cognitive behaviors, and it's doing that while you're alive, isn't it? Instead of, you know, keep going along, and instead of, and sometimes this is why we have the pain and we have the challenge, just to think, I keep doing this thing, maybe, you know, maybe I'll try something else, or we pick up a spiritual book, or I used to read all the self-help books and the Deepak Chopra and you know, all of them, and they all, you know, they all say the same thing, don't they? Teach your brother like, you know, you teach your neighbor like you would yourself, and then they say do it, and if you keep doing it, you know, you'll see things change. You know, pray for those that, you know, you dislike, and do all these different things. You know, don't gossip, don't do these things, and you live this life, and then you're on the path, you know, you're back on this quest, and you're getting the clues again, and realizing that when you are honest, you do the honorable thing, however much you're challenged, you are then revealed the truth. You know, I wanted to access the Akashic records, and I used to see people on YouTube saying, well, I'll give you Akashic record healings, and but only glimpse of it I've had, it's been through massive challenges where I've gone beyond and been completely loving and lied about, and you've gone, well, you know, I'm at the depths of despair, but I feel I've done the right thing, and then you know, the secrets were opened. And I think this is another thing why you wouldn't encourage it or write about it, because it, you know, I'm not saying it's for everyone, but some of us, the challenge is to, you know, you have to show to be honorable, and that you can be trusted with the information, because the true nature reality is very different to what, at least I was, you know, brought up to believe. You know, the solid biology of we're all going to die, and having to, you know, unlearn, and you know, not only just unlearn it, not forget it, because you still have to deal with everyone who lives on that level as well, knowing that there's, you know, there's so much more.
That's absolutely right. And you know, it's interesting you bring that up, because in the Sufi path, I learned the harder the better. So meaning in your life, if you have more trials and tribulations and challenges and difficulties, that means you are loved and favored by the divinity. So you are so loved, Faye. You are so cherished by the divinity. And that's why everything in your life, you overcame it. It's like any of those that are initiates of this path who are walking this journey, and we're all walking each other home. And I do realize that no matter what religion or path you follow, there's truth in every path. As long as you're a good human being, you're good to yourself and the people that love you, that's all that matters. And if everyone in the world was the same, the world would be kind of boring. So that's the beauty, that we're all different complexions and backgrounds. So we get to learn from each other. And even if you have an artist painting a picture on the canvas, he'll have different colors that are to be celebrated, not condemned, that will cover that whole tapestry of human existence and human life. So that is the beauty of who we are as human beings, that we come together and we learn from each other. Myself meeting you in online and in person, and learning from each other, and just being on this journey of just trying to do the right thing and to know thyself. to know thyself, to know each other. And that is, I believe, the most beautiful thing you can do. And I thank you for being a part of my journey in that way. And which goes to my next question, Faye, is right now, especially my generation, we're dealing with a lot of difficulties in terms of the world as we know it. You cannot financially start a family. You cannot get married. It's just so many things which are much more complicated now than it was in the time of our parents or grandparents, where it was easier to get married, easier to settle down. So now, right now, we're seeing a society that's traumatized. So what would you advise from your divine feminine perspective for both men and women who are, let's say, traumatized in this society, hypersexualized, they cannot commit to one relationship, they're jumping from one relation to another, they're jumping from one job to another, they're having a hard time committing to something happened in their childhood. What would you advise for somebody to try to find healing in their life for those that went through that?
Yeah, and I think we've seen a lot of this, and this is what I think the other beauty is about us all being able to connect with each other and having all the information now, and having all the research and so many people giving their testimonies, is that people connect and can support each other, and know, what hasn't suited us as human nature, what really isn't conducive to keep us happy as human beings. It just doesn't suit us, the vast majority of us, and that people do want to have children and relationships and communities and to trust each other and neighbors and, fruit growing from the trees. And there's no reason why it can't happen. So, and this repression, which is obviously feels so unnatural to us all, and for whatever reason it's come to be, everyone's had enough.
Yes.
And to see the pivot and the greater picture, that human beings will, undoubtedly go with their natures,
Mm-hmm.
and that we can love each other, we can understand, and then why not live like this? As I say, if we have the resources, we have the information. There's no need to be ignorant. There's no need to say, well, we need to be ruled by this one or that one, and we need to fight each other. That we're human beings and we want to live in communities, and these are global communities as well as we want to be, as you say, different. I want to be different and you want to be different. We don't all want to be the same. We love each other's diversity. As you say, it's so much more interesting. I'm bored of myself. I want someone that's completely different. Tell me about different things around the world. It's fascinating, and how lucky we are to be here at this time. And we've all been in this collectively, haven't we? Globally, we've all been through what's gone down recently in the last few years. To know, if anything, that we are all human beings, and we all have the same fears and the same desires.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't understand why people would want to be cruel to each other.
Yes.
But I understand this is, perhaps been a part of the system, and there's no reason why the system can't change. Lots of things are in place, so there's, deliveries and food. There's, just for a twist of things, it could be organized and changed, without there having to be all the fear. It's almost like someone's holding on really tight. There's enough for everyone.
That's true.
We don't need to live in poverty. It might sound idealistic, but thinking, well, it's the 21st century, we've all got, wireless stuff, and there's the cleverest people alive, and we can all have access to that information. We can all cook like top chefs if we just watch YouTube. We're not so different, despite all being really different.
Yeah.
What are we doing? We all just want to get on and, have a nice time.
Mm-hmm.
We all feel better caring for each other, and how creative people are. Just, the lockdown and even things like Facebook and Instagram just showed how creative people are. People are so artistic and musical, and, like presenting, presenting stuff, meeting people from around the world that you'd have to get on planes with and have, so it's a magical time. and it's just bringing all that magic, isn't it, into more, living in the real world. And we've managed to have got it online, but, between each other now, not be isolated in islands, in the real world, off the computer, that we can use the best of this world. And maybe that's what happens with generations. We're all on the computer, and they're like, the next generation will be like, well, that's great, but we're all going to be on outside as well. We've got the best of what you gave us, and take it, and use that in the highest possible way, which will happen anyway, because the great architect's going to unfold everything in the highest order.
That's right.
So use technology to give people what they, because we need flesh, don't we? We need delicious things. Part of being a human is the touch, isn't it? And the skin. That's, however much even you and I may talk about spirit, the human experience is divine as well. And we need it. There's something about human nature that we're social, and we're, we need a human touch. We need people caring for for us, and we need to care. We're dynamic with our needs, and that doesn't seem to change with however much propaganda or whatever much technology. We all seem, to have, the human natures of ourselves, the want to be honourable, to be a good person, to have purpose, to, be part of the community and to help other people. And it gives a human esteem, doesn't it? And I think we're not given these esteems. We all go a little bit awry.
Faye, that is absolutely wonderful, because that was bringing me to my next question is, how do you see humanity changing in terms of the AI and why we need human interaction more than ever? And I think you answered that in a beautiful way about why we need each other, why sometimes we need the human touch, and why we need each other's love, each other's support to be on this path that we're on. Which goes to my next question is, right now, in terms of the disconnect between man and woman in today's world, as a woman and as somebody from the divine feminine, what advice would you give men of today's generation and today's world to be able to uplift and love their women correctly? So one thing I learned is, in order to love your woman, you have to listen to her. So what advice can you give in terms of that disconnect we're seeing? Because like you said, the people that run this world, they don't want us to come together. They don't want different races and religions to come together. They don't want men and women to come together. They want humanity to be at a crossroads in many ways. So what do you see from your perspective and wisdom?
You have good questions, don't you, Salman? I think we have to live up to what, we have to, walk the walk, because we can talk and look at things and say, oh, Jesus this, or patience or compassion. And the biggest challenges come, don't they, the people closest to us. And we can think, oh, well, that's for everyone else. But, now I'm in a relationship and I've got a partner, I don't know how to behave.
Mm-hmm.
And people talk about triggers these days, and these are perhaps our greatest triggers, because we've been programmed from all this other stuff that was perhaps dysfunctional. But I think we have to be patient. We have to realize we've all been through trauma. We're probably all suffering from some levels of post-traumatic stress disorder, and just keep being as patient, loving, and honest and kind to each other as we can. Being honest with ourselves and with each other. I think maybe, pressures got put on people, and people made out they're other people, and everything just gets confused. And the whole world seems to be an inverted lie, and no one knows left from right anymore. But I think a long way could just go with being honest, and even saying, I don't know, but, I'm here, turning up. And, people do know the difference between right and wrong, but we have these insecurities down, these hang-ups, where we convince ourselves to do the wrong thing to be the right thing. And I think just keep turning up and being honest, all of us, and I do see, people are honest. Sometimes you think, oh, everyone's being too honest now, and it's, it's mainstream. But this is part of perhaps the process. Everyone's, going to confess just that they're human, they're just, I'm human too. We make mistakes, we're completely imperfect, but that's the beauty of it. And it's not that anyway, because the great architect again has done it. How dare we even complain? Look at it, we've got the most amazing machine in our own body and minds, and we're going, oh, it's not enough, we're given the greatest gift. And I think when, there's the challenges, and when the right thing happens, it's natural. We know what to do. And this is the greatest trick of it all. And that, without the books or the TV programs or YouTube, we know how to be romantic partners to each other. We know how to parent. We know how to look after the older generation. This is innate.
Yeah.
To the human psyche, that I have to believe in and convinced of. You look at the animal kingdom, they know what to do, and then we know what to do, and perhaps we get confused with the other thing telling us we don't know what to do. But I think when the timing's right, it's in our makeup.
That's absolutely right, Faye. And I think that's everything happens with divine timing. And we just have to do the work, because I think as long as you're doing the work, that's all that matters. And in the grand scheme of things, things fall in place naturally. And for those that don't know, Faye is also a published author. So please tell us about the books you have written and where people can find your work and support your work.
Thanks, Salman. So after all that, I thought, the world's the most wonderful book, isn't it? Each person's story. So I'm far more interested in, listening to people's stories now. It's more fascinating than anything that I could make up. But, when I was figuring out, what was the truth and doing all the research, there are a few of the initiations I went through that were like stepping stones to my, my big sort of revelation. So I put them all in a book. So almost as a signpost to go, these are in a fictional setting. These are the initiations that I went through in life that took me through a place of sort of powerlessness and despair and not knowing. So connecting a few of the dots and a few more things making sense to go, oh, there is magic afoot. There is something in the spectrum. There is something in the chakras. So yeah, just an easy reading book to just put down the things that for me, the wildlife, the foxes, string together a few of the different elements that got me questioning as well. What does that hieroglyphic mean? And it's not what's going to be in any book. What does it mean to me if I do cryptic word associations, or if I keep staring at it? So just that's a book called The Crossroads, and that's just online. And that was just the crossroads to go, right, there's something different. And it was just my way of going, this is a few of the steps that it took for me to reach this level of blueprint thinking of how we're living in a simulation, and that the Akashic records could pretty much be a thing that we could access. So yeah, that was The Crossroads.
Thank you, Faye, so much for this. And it's truly been such a pleasure for me to speak with you. I enjoyed meeting you online on Facebook. Then I enjoyed meeting you in person in London and having a wonderful day together. And now I'm enjoying seeing you again. And that's the beauty of technology, where we could be thousands of miles away, but it looks like we're right next to each other. And that's the beauty of the Crossroads as well. I have read the Crossroads, and it tells you that wherever you want to be, just think about it and you're already there. And that's the beauty that I've learned in the Sufi path as well, is when the masters tell you that if you need my help, just think of me and I'm already there with you. And that's so beautiful that you mentioned that, and how the world can be at a distance where we can be so far away from each other, but yet we're so close to each other. But we don't realize that we have to tap into our potential and tap into those truths. I've really enjoyed speaking with you, and I hope those that listen to this were able to benefit as well. Is there anything, Faye, that I have failed to ask you that you would like me to know, or you would like the audience to know? Any questions on spirituality, life purpose, religion, anything you like for free talk?
Well, you're good at these questions, aren't you, Sam? You're not, I'm the world's worst person at, being on YouTube or anything like that. But I think it's this idea that we don't know, and saying that we know, I don't know, I don't remember, that we do know. And if you do ask the question, I've found you are given the answer instantly. And this answer, and this is what opened a lot of other doors for me, and the tarot world and these other different worlds, that the answer will be given like on the side of the bus, or a piece of paper that you've put down, or a TV advert will come on and say, this is the answer, which again made me question, at least, well, what is this reality? It's not a biological reality if it's instantly digitally communicating with me. And it's something Deepak Chopra used to talk about back in the day. If you sit and listen to the conversations around you, they're messengers, and everything I've done is through my own experience. Then I realized, they call this thing, gnosis, or the Gnostic schools. But any sort of spiritual lesson I ever came across, I went and lived it, until you realize, this reality communicates. It's not inanimate. It's something really quite different. That idea of the fractal and the hologram, that all the information is contained in the small. And if you ask the question, the information, it'll answer you. And I don't know what your experiences are from your Sufi and your different paths.
I agree with you, Faye, because you have to be able to pay attention to everything that is around you. Maybe you might see something on a billboard, maybe you might see something on a movie or reading a book, but something will capture your attention, and it will tell you that you're never alone in your life. You're always loved and protected and looked after. Now, recently I was feeling down about a particular situation, and I was sitting in my room, and I saw something, and it basically was a quick message that said, help is on the way. And I really loved that. I really liked that. And I resonated with that. And it shows us that sometimes, Faye, we think we're alone, we're abandoned. We don't have anybody out there that cares for us, that loves us. But we just don't realize that there's a whole unseen realm and world out there that our eyes cannot perceive. And not to fear any danger, just trust God in whichever manner you perceive that divinity. And just walk your path without fearing any danger. And I think once you come to that realization that you're always protected, you're loved, you're never alone, and the things that you're meant to do in your life as a predestiny, you will accomplish everything, then you're not going to worry about any obstacle, any enemy, any darkness, because it's all part of that one process. That's what has kind of given me the comfort as well.
Excellent. It's part of your story, isn't it? It's all wonderful. It's all, every part of it is sacred. Part of the bespoke ritual.
That's right. That's absolutely right. And now that we're coming to the top of the hour, are there any closing thoughts that you would like to give, Faye? Anything that I have not asked you?
No, just it's been a pleasure to talk to you and a pleasure to meet you. And we had such fun when we went to London.
Of course.
They talk about ley lines and different things, but I think it's where we are. Everything's a state of consciousness.
Yes.
When you've opened up your mind to that level, it says we are like the center of your own vortex, your own torus. And it is like a magnetism, and everything, the patterns of what you read, you know, they connect the dots. And you know, there was a saying, wasn't there, that you just keep doing your work diligently, and you know, sooner or later, you know, the right friends will turn up. And you think there's, you know, the knowledge of years. I know you studied a lot as well, but the, you know, the dive into trying to study the occult and studying the different religions, and coming to these different conclusions, to find someone else or other people on the planet would have been, you know, without the internet, difficult. I'd have had even maybe, you know, the county I live in, but through the magic of Facebook and at the algorithms that we can complain about, we've found each other. But just think, you know, the chance of us being born, the chance of the earth, and the chances of us all coming together in this time and place, and there's more magic afoot than we can ever possibly imagine. And of course, it's going to turn out wonderful. But it wouldn't have come this far, this masterpiece, to do anything but, you know, be absolutely fab.
I agree. And I think it's the most important thing for us to just keep the faith and know, if you made it this far in your life through all the beautiful experiences you went through, that this is not the end of your story. It might be the end of a chapter, but it's not the end of your story. So you have to keep the faith. You have to stay in love. You have to stay happy, and you have to guide each other back home, guide your souls back to the source that you come from, learn the lessons that you need to learn. And it's such a beautiful probability that we live in, for us all to come together online and meet each other in person. We could be at thousands of miles away. We never imagined that one day I would meet this person, this person, this person, and you just come together and embrace those lessons in your life. And I think that's absolutely fantastic, how divine plan comes in motion, and we have to keep the faith and be there for each other. And I think you have taught that to me, and for you, I honor thyself very much for teaching that to me. And of course, in the future, if I come to London again, I would love to see you again and to just enjoy the day together with history, culture, the arts, and just so much to take in, so much journeys that are there to teach us, to guide us, to hone us. And I thank you, Faye, for giving me your time. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Salman. It's an honor to know you and be your friend.
All right.